to present today on the Design Think Your Code. This is based on a blog post that I put together. We've also been looking at the developer experience as a term. Just a little bit of introduction. These are probably the 17 bullet points we'll be hitting through the presentation. For those who are playing at home, categorize these as either ones that you currently do every day, ones that you think that you could add to your workflow, and those you totally disagree with. I'm Darrin Southern. I started my work career a week before my 18th birthday, so you can do the math on my age there. And there will be people out there who were born after this date. So don't, no ageism here. I started my FileMaker Pro professional career at 2006. I did work with FileMaker 2 as a graphic artist, and then my career pretty much started with FileMaker 7. And so that's one of the things that I learned the 7 world, but as a professional developer, I had to go back and find out how things were done in 6. And it was pretty much is that how you really did it? That's how you had to do it? I'm a father of 2 adult children. My partner also has 2 adult children. And when I'm not doing those things, I am out on the road on my bicycle, and we call ourselves mammals. That's probably one of the many acronyms we'll put through the presentation here today. I'm happy for people to ask questions along, bring in points of view. Anyone here know what a mammal is? What it stands for? No, middle-aged man in Lycra. And we do say Lycra is a privilege, not a right. You'll find my Engage 2020 presentation up on YouTube on slide controls and how that can work with your user experience. I am currently a senior developer at Beeswax, coming up on 2 years with Beeswax. You would have seen my blogs about joining the Hive and to work with a team. And it's been a great journey there, and I continue that journey every day. I am FileMaker certified. I hold about 8 certifications from 9 onwards. And for me, the certification is a big part of getting out of my comfort zone. I don't like exams, and it's just, it's something that I do to put myself out of that comfort zone. When we talk about the Claris FileMaker platform, it does have a lot of rich functions and tools that have been developed over 30 years to be able to give us what we want to build. And it is a rapid application development. We do have the benefit of having both low and pro code, and it fits very well in with the agile workflow where we can create the solution from the prototype itself. Design thinking, another way of looking at that is to say that what you're putting together has been considered, that you've thought about what you're doing, and that you are applying that thinking to what it is you're designing at the time. When we talk about a design pattern, we then start to say, well, that definition there does not talk about any form of graphic design. There's no form of logos, colors, graphics, fonts. It's just about creating a reusable solution for a similar problem so that you are continuing on through the process of saying, well, this is how I did it. This is how I'm going to continue to do it, or I'm going to take some time and work out other ways of doing the same thing to come up with the best design pattern for that particular problem, because we are problem solvers at the end of the day. Just to go back a little bit, we're saying the user experience is just how your end user interacts with your system and how they come away from the solution. And of course, if that's a bad user experience on a website, they won't come back. That's a very quick way to lose your audience. And where it's talking about a website, that can be your solution, your database, or your app each time. So when we talk about the user experience from using your software, we also have the developer experience for how the developer finds your code in the system. I'm going to coin the phrase developer next. And this is a mixture of the next person who opens up your code, whether they're you, yourself, in 6 months, tomorrow, the next day. It's just a phrase that I've come up with as the developer experience. And of course, what does coin the phrase mean? Well, it's to come up with a new saying. Sometimes these sayings are sarcastic or ironic, and that's okay as well. You know, we're not going to take ourselves too serious in this journey of developer experience on the systems. Just want to give an example of some of the graphic design thought processes we go through when putting together, say, a magazine advertisement. We would ensure that we had a single message, that we didn't try to have too many messages for that particular piece of publication. Now, it would also include a unique sales proposition, a call to action, buy some, or any of those sorts of things. To me, one of the great examples of a single message is Think Different. And Jobs' work with Chat Day was legendary. Not only are they reinventing how we use devices, but they were reinventing how they put forward their marketing. And I do, think back to how would Jobs have done this, his list of threes, how he looked at the marketing and, getting us out of that comfort zone. I was grateful to be part of the design masterclass with Albert at Smallco, and I actually hosted the design masterclass down under. And I picked a very unique location. We did have the choice of putting together a presentation at a conference room or your usual place where you'll get the screen at the front and the chairs. And we had all that here as well. We were actually one of the first people to use the conference room at Luna Park. And it was a great environment to talk about your design. We had 4 days to focus on the skills. And that was a big part of it as well, to put aside time to focus on yourself. And it's almost like working on your business instead of in your business. It's the same sort of idea. It was really much about getting out of your comfort zone. And spending those 4 days with the developers, I really started to see how that affected the developers. We had a layout example, like the advertisement that we saw before. We were taking one of the layouts from the developers and to say, here is your single purpose. It was just an exercise at the end of the day. There was no talk about having to put this into production or just to have it that you have been through this experience. And it was met with objection and a lot of justifications of the 12 buttons that were on the layout, or this is not going to work, or those sorts of things. At the end of the day, it was about getting out of the comfort zone. At the end of the day, most developers either ended up with a wine or a beer. There were a few tears and some frustration. But the whole exercise was taking what you currently know, going to research something different, and come up with a different answer. Now, when we do talk about researching what we can put together for a client beyond what we currently have, you can ask the why 7 times. I'm not sure if anyone's heard the reference from that through the early days of Toyota. Why do you go to the layout? Why do you run this report? Those sorts of why concepts will then allow you to be able to get an understanding of what's happening, but then you can then observe your users, watch them use the system. Don't preempt what's happening with their interaction with that layout. And of course, if you're remote and you can't actually observe them, start logging the button clicks and the scripts in the solution to get an idea of what they're actually doing in the system and how they do it. There are times that a user will want certain buttons on a layout. You can put some scripts together and then you can actually see what they need at the end of the day. Some of the possible design patterns that came out of that type of work is just one big button for the layout. It's very, very simple. You have a single purpose layout with a single button. That's all you need. An initial found set. I've got solutions where as you log into the solution, it looks to see which group you are within the organization and then transfers you to a layout that has your found set, because you don't need the whole set. So you're removing the mouse clicks for the user. It might be more appropriate to give them a daily email blast rather than having to log into the system at 9 o'clock every morning to go and see what their to-do lists are or what their certification expiries are. And then in the context of their business, you might be giving them an alert SMS so that the next day when they log into the system might be too late for them to see what's happened within the system. And some of these design patterns that we apply to our users, we can also apply to ourselves in the way we're working with the system. One of the benefits of being at the amusement park is that there came a point when one of the developers did get a bit frustrated, and we were talking about the single purpose of their layout. And so we headed outside for a walk, we went around the amusement park, and we stopped at the amusement where you ring the bell with the hammer. And in this case, it was kids. And these kids were allowed to have 3 attempts before they rang the bell, and they would end up with a prize at the end. I watched it, and then I asked the developer to tell me what the one feature of that. And the attendant actually had a hidden button at the side of the desk. And as the child would hit the bell, he would press the button X number of times to get the bell to come up higher, until on the third one, they always hit the bell. They always walked away with a smile, and they always walked away with a prize. And to me, that was just a real life example of that one feature of that ride that you don't even know about. It's not conscious, but it made a huge difference to the kids who were using the ride. One of the features that we have within the Claris FileMaker platform is the card windows. And this came in FileMaker 16. So we've had this for about 5 years. Game changer from my point of view. That and slide controls is a big deal for building the UX. There is one friction point that we have with card windows, and that's to be able to switch to layout mode once you do fire up a card. Now, if you want to make any changes to that layout, you either open a new window, and you can do it via the manage layouts. You can then find the layout that you're after, and then you can go and find set records, go into browse mode, and then you've got hopefully you've got the right layout, because layouts can have the same name, you're on the same found set, and you can then adjust the layout and then test it and see how you go from there. If you start moving that across multiple days of development and across a team, it can be quite intensive and expensive. I actually came to this idea when I was away from the computer. And that's another part of the developer experience, is to step away from the screen, go and look at the real world and see if you can come up with an answer. I come up with the idea of putting an if statement around my open card window step. And to make it a little simpler, I created a custom function for the full access users and the option keys. That script looks like this. The custom function is called developer press option key. You can have that as a verb or a noun or whatever makes sense. And then you're going to do something different on whether or not you open up the window as a document or a card. And if it says a document, you've then got the found set and the layout and the ability to work with that close it, and then run your script again. So do you think this would make a good native feature? It's important for the community to go back to Claris and to talk about these sorts of favorite features. They don't know unless we ask. Now, there is a feature request on the card window layout mode. It's been on the community and it's been there for 5 years. And so far it's had 13 votes. If you're watching this presentation either live or from the recording and you think this is a good idea, go to that link, go over and jump on the feature requests, and let's try and see if we can get that to 130 from 13, because it does make a difference. They are listening. So we're looking at the matrix. Again, if you looked at someone's code and thought, I'm not sure what it is I'm looking at. Folk Legend says that we're looking at sushi recipes there in the matrix. I don't think we actually know at the end of the day. To work on jobs as a group of threes, good, better, best, I've sort of tried to group our 17 bullet points into 3 separate design patterns, whether they're code, execution, or environment. You can actually Google this, and different design websites talk about 3, 7, or 10 different types of design patterns. I don't think the type matters. I think it's more about saying, I'm going to go through the process of putting together a design pattern. And I do have some definitions here of the different design patterns. These haven't been tailored for software development, but it gives you sort of an overview of how you can separate these things out. So if we look at the code design patterns, the first one I put here is developer-friendly code. This could be like an overview for other bullet points, but at the end of the day, it's about writing clean code. There's an excellent set of YouTube videos by Uncle Bob talking about write clean code. It is 8 hours worth of content, but it's worth putting on a side monitor or running it, listening to it and watching it. There is a lot within those 8 hours to write notes about. And they're talking about C++, JavaScript, Java itself, Python, a whole lot of languages, but it does apply itself to what we do as developers on the Claris platform. Zero code errors. This one's a big one for me. I've very much spent my days working with DDR analysis tools, such as Inspector Pro, and there are others out in the market, obviously. And it's first worthwhile defining what an error is, because you could say if I've gone to the wrong layout, then that's software bug. But in this case, I'm talking about an error that's reportable by a DDR. And an example of that is when you are going to go to layout and it says layout missing. Now, to take a system back to zero errors, you've then got to go and say to yourself, right, what's the answer to that particular error? Do I remove the script step? Because this particular error has been there for 6 months and none of the users have said that, you know, we're going to the wrong layout to create a record. So I've got to remove that script step. Or should it go to a different layout that's already in the system in a completely different context? Or the third option is that the layout's been deleted and needs to be recreated. We just don't know what those are. One of the other benefits of having zero errors in your code is, and also running a daily DDR, is that if you run it and there's an error in the code, you've created that error that day. And when you're running with 0 errors, it's one less thing for the next developer to have to deal with in your code. Human-friendly variable names. I've worked on some systems that either have, very small names, like A, B, C, D, and F for a variable. Now that's great if you're doing algebra, but that wasn't my strength going through school. It's still not. You can have some variables that are so long that you just can't fit them on the screen to be able to work out what's going on. It's not just the idea of having a human-friendly variable name, but also human-friendly layout objects, layout names, scripts through your whole system. It just makes it easier for the next person to read it. And when we're talking about developer next, as I said, it could be yourself in 6 months, and you're not going to get away from the point where you say, I wrote this 6 months ago, what was I thinking? Because we do change our patterns. But you will help the next developer, and sometimes that can be someone starting out in their career, and you're going to give them a much better experience in your system. Tend to stay away from things that may change over time, but as long, it does help to have the user presented field label matching the field in the system. So just keep the logic simple. One thing I do is tend to lean on some of the standards for coding. If I'm working through a loop, I will use I and J so that I can work through. And if I'm doing a sub loop, I might even use X and Y inside. But you'll see this further on how I use that. Name your layout objects. With FileMaker 16, we were gifted with the objects inspector. And one of the benefits there is that I can turn elements on and off and drill down, but I can also do a search within my elements and look for particular items. I don't need to drill in and out and try and find things. So naming your layout objects also obviously helps with go-to-object script steps, but it also allows the next person coming through to see what each of the different buttons and portals and slide controls are, and to be able to navigate them through the objects inspector. Object themes and styles. This is connected to naming your layout objects and elements. Having a very clear idea of how a button should be presented, whether it's the color, the font, or even the effects you put on it, it does help to be able to say, this is how my button should look. And then if you make an adjustment to that style, you can flow it through all your themes. That's for the developer experience. There's also a number of under the hood sessions that will tell you how things will load faster based on, I think there's 7 layers that it works through as to whether the element has a native style or an adjusted style, or whether we just set to default. It is well worth spending time setting up your systems with correct themes and styles. And we do get a number of themes and styles that come with Claris. Apex Blue comes to mind. And last month, we did see that there are some sample files out on the web that you can grab that show you how to apply Apex Blue. There are a few other styles that are coming around the place as well. Script comments. This is one of my bugbears where I can read a paragraph in the script to tell me what the next function is going to do. And the paragraph I still don't understand, and therefore I've got no hope understanding what the next lot of the script's going to help me with. One of the benefits I do see of script comments is for headers. And one of those headers that does help a lot, particularly when we're working through systems that are using JSON to pass variables between elements, is to have the JSON in the header of the script so that you can then apply it to a button, so you don't have to drill down through many layers of objects to find out what the syntax of that JSON is that the script's expecting. Another idea is to use comments as section breakers, so that you can wrap your code around a set of tags, like we would in HTML, and learn from that programming language to see how we could look at things. Just for some examples, that's a header that you would put into your script that would define the parameters coming in for your JSON for running that script. I've actually put a purposeful fault into the header, just so that if I do copy and paste it, it's going to return me an error, so I know that I haven't copied some data that I forget to change, and then that ends up being in script incorrectly. So you'll notice the event doesn't have a quotes around it for the actual value itself. I have used a function here called dateiso, and this is a function where we can run with a set of dates that, particularly for those of us down under, that our formats are normally day, day, month, month, year, year, year. And of course, in the US, you are month, month, day, day, year, year. And so when you start passing data between international users or users in different date formats, you can start to have some grief. So if you create a standard way of displaying your dates, this is not exactly a set ISO standard, but the use of pluses in the date actually means you can paste this data into a field or enter this, and this is a valid date format. And you can pass it through your JSON. And it's a very clean way of moving the data around. We talk about whether something's faster or not as a function. And that faster can be either theoretical, practical, or perceptual. It is faster to be able to run getter's number compared to the date format. I actually thought to time these things, to take 10,000 dates and run it through as getter's number. Now, there's not too many situations where you need to deal with 10,000 dates at one time, but I made it that number just so that I could come in at 0.6 seconds, so that I had something measurable to see what was going on. Running as dateiso, we added a 1/10 of a second. One of the things I did was also then to put that custom function, that function into a custom function, and it added another 1/10 of a second. So the question was it the custom function that was adding the extra time, or the ISO function within the custom function? So then I put the getter's number into a custom function, and we ended up with a similar result as using the calculation to return the ISO date format. So when we start talking about is it faster to use custom functions or not, it's a similar time extension to using a calculation to give you a readable date. All of this also needs to come back to context, because how are you using that date? Is it needing to go in and out of JSON? Is it needing to be used across different time zones? Do you need to run it as a list? And all of these things then can tell you which format to put your dates in, and therefore how the developer experience of using those dates will come through. Here's an example of the script comments as section breakers. At this stage, I've actually put it in tags to make it a little bit more HTML-ish. And it could be called whatever you like. But looking at this code within a much larger script, you can tell where the open card window function starts and finishes. these examples for the execution of code pretty much all get grouped together. If you're putting together a script or function as one of your processes, you need to see how long it's going to take you to troubleshoot it. Now, that'll also help you as part of your full CRUD process of writing a script to say, well, if the user does what they're supposed to, then this is what's going to happen. And this is how I need to test it. And this is how I need to be able to fix it if it doesn't go correctly. So it's worthwhile when you're starting your next script, sit down, have a look at the context of how the user will be using the script, and then just take yourself through a troubleshooting process. And that can include all sorts of environments and scenarios. When I talk about economical execution, this also comes back to user experience, that you don't want a button pressed and it takes 10 minutes to run the process. The famous said for developers, have a look at your scripts and see the time frame it takes to get through the script. You can abstract your code, but is that going to make it much harder to be able to troubleshoot it and also get to the end of the script? And that's for the third bullet point, for successful completion. There's been a number of systems that I've worked on where it's the correct outcome or the expected behavior that we only get 3/4 of the way through the script. And that can be quite perplexing for the person who doesn't know that. And I know we can put a comment in, but if we work on the idea that a script is successful in its completion because it gets to the end, then that's an assumption we can make. And I know we don't make assumptions that often, or we shouldn't, but that's an assumption you can make. I've also come across scripts where the script calls itself, and you might have a number of if statements with parameters, and the one script calls itself based on different situations. That can be very difficult to troubleshoot as well. Moving on to error checking and capturing. This is another area where I think the standard process would be to show the user a dialogue to say there's been an error, please contact your developer. We never get those returned to us. That's probably a bad user experience. 9 times out of 10, you'll find that the end user won't even read said dialogue, and you won't know that there's been an error. And the process will just continue, and as again, you'll have an error sitting there for 6 months. Create an error log. Create a table where you're capturing the errors. Just like before, we're talking about the different ways that you can have a user log into your system and see the current notifications, or you can send them a daily digest of what's happening, or you can send them an SMS to say, here is an error that's just happened. You can do that yourself as a developer. The first screen that you see when you log into the system is the errors that have happened the last time you've logged in, or send yourself an email at the end of the day to say who's had an error in the system. And even better, send yourself an SMS if it's a critical error that's happened in the system. You'll win a lot of points with your client that you've told them about the error before they've even found it themselves. And that even comes down to the user logging and notification. Log when users log into the system. Log when they run particular scripts. You can also use this as part of your user acceptance testing, your UAT. There's a certain process they should run. If you get reports back from the user to say, yes, I tested the system, check the user logging, and, well, hang on, you're in the system for 10 minutes yesterday. You couldn't have possibly worked your way through that whole set of tests to make sure that system was running correctly. I do know of developers who will purposely put an error into their UAT and tell the client, unless you find the error, you haven't tested it correctly, and therefore I'm not moving this function from UAT to production. And it will get them to test it a lot more thoroughly. This is one of the examples of troubleshooting your scripts. Just as we were running a if statement to open up a document window rather than a card window for doing our editing, I have a flag that runs a global, can either be a field or a variable, that just says, if I'm not in local debug mode, run the script on the server, otherwise run this locally. And you will notice there's a window script around the local running of that script, just so that we're taking ourselves out of the current context, as does performing a script on server. So you can add your own items around running the script locally, but you'll end up being able to economically troubleshoot that script. Hopefully you can recreate it on the test environment or running on the live system. It's a lot harder to troubleshoot scripts that are running through the server itself. Environmental design patterns. Claris is, as I said, we've got low code, and we also have the option of doing some pro code. There's many benefits of running industry standards. As an example of this, I've got a client system that, to begin with, we introduced the data API for the iPads using FileMaker Go to talk to the FileMaker server. And this allowed the iPads to go offline, to sync the data back through the data API and communicate with the server. Sitting in with some IT managers and some owners of the system, being the product managers and the clients themselves, we talked about what FileMaker server could offer through the data API. And within a space of about 12 months, this was the infrastructure. That we were no longer having the other developers in the .NET space, the guys working in the iOS space with Xcode, and then we had developers in the JavaScript space within React. They started working with data directly from the FileMaker server. And it became the holder of truth. So rather than being a side section, now it became the main point of the system. And I've sat in meetings where the other developers have asked, how long is it going to take for me to put up some tables so they can have access to them? Using the data API, we're talking hours, not weeks, to put that sort of features together, those sort of features. It really is a powerful tool. Part of this also is that the team of .NET, iPad, and JavaScript developers, at any one stage in this project, that numbered between 10 and 20. For about a 10-year period, I was the only FileMaker developer on this project. We really do have a solution that we can put forward that gives us a very powerful position within organizations. Part of that's because of the data API. You can find the guide for the data API at Claris's site. There are many blogs out there on the data API. There's one there obviously from Beeswax, you talking about REST and curl. OData has made itself to the Windows and Mac platform. We've had it on Unix now. That again will be another game changer. We're still working our way through on how OData is going to make a difference. And I can tell you that there's a huge benefit of sitting in with an IT team of developers and saying, I'm putting together a data API from the Claris FileMaker server. And by the way, I've just shared out my Postman collection with you with connection to the current system. Here's your username and password, and you just get smiles. We're working in a RESTful environment. We're working with JSON coming backwards and forwards. And using these industry standards, we are a player at the table. We've got a seat at the table. This is one of my bugbears, developing live on production servers.
But then I got a bleeding profile. And then.
Sorry, I've got some audio coming in. At one stage, there were some blogs promoted on best practices for developing live on a server. To me, that's kind of like driving with your headlights off on the car. There were reasons and excuses why we weren't doing it in the Claris environment. The amount of time it took to do imports was one of them. Now that we have the data migration tool, as an excuse, that moves away. And just a side note on the import script steps, that's had a major change recently, particularly from the developer experience, not just how it looks. There's a huge feature in the import function that you can turn off the auto enter data, just import the data from the spreadsheet and then tell the server to do the auto enters. Because when you see a dialog saying importing records, it's not the records, it's the auto enters that's killing you. So we do have a much stronger experience with importing records. That said, DMT really is a game changer. It really is important if you want that seat at the table with the rest of the IT department to have a development server, staging server, and a production server. DMT was part of a paid service from Claris, and correct me if I'm wrong, but now it's actually a free tool. It is up to date with the most recent version, and it is well worth spending your time getting an understanding of that particular tool. It is command line, and there are a number of front-end GUIs for that function. One of them's out of productive computing, one that I found very useful. And I've been able to give this migration assistant across to junior developers and some in-house developers at clients, and then they run their own migration of the system and they run the whole process themselves. You can take this concept of DevOps even further with things like Otto to manage this and to make these all things automatically. So these are all part of the rich toolkit that we have on the Claris platform that allow us to run industry standards. Research new functions. I did mention before, I think last week, that in doing some training with David Head, who's on the call, he was very keen on saying, right, go and find out how this function works. Go and compare it to other functions. Really go and work out what's going on and decide whether it fits into your toolkit, but just know it's there. One of those functions is the while function. And I picked this one because this is something that is a little more advanced in my mind. It's helping us out with looping. It's another way of doing a recursive custom function. What you'll find is that you can have a custom function like that. Can anyone tell me what the answer is by reading it? Anyone jump in? Anyone care to unmute and read the custom function and see what it is? What the answer is? No? Okay. It's 9 actually. Being able to look at the custom function and understand, the function while and the different options, it's worth spending your time to try and research that as a particular function. There are obviously Claris help notes on while, and we've written some blogs at Beeswax and other partners on how the while function works. Get Claris FileMaker certified. Again, I'm coining a phrase. This is me really pushing myself outside of my comfort zone. I went to art school rather than a normal high school. As I mentioned, I was working a week before my 18th birthday. I went on a gap year, and I'm pretty much still on that gap year. So doing an exam or doing a set test like this is right out of what I'm used to doing. So this is where I do push myself out of the comfort zone. There are a number of different references that you can look at. As someone who's, I've set the exam over the last 10 years a number of times, look at the quick start guide from the certification, read the help sections, particularly the notes. The notes on each help file is something worth you reading. And productive computing also have a set of test questions. One of the other Beeswax developers went through these questions just this week, and he was able to pass the exams with the help of this. It's obviously not the exact same questions, but it will give you an idea of what type of questions you're going to get in the exam. It's going to give you an idea of the format, and it's going to give you an idea of the structure of the type of questions you're after. And they are broken into 7 sections, and you might find that your calculations is an area that you need to go back to the help and to get a better understanding. But I do recommend, for your own experience as a developer, to spend the time to do the research to put together your study for the exam. We do talk about, being hit by a bus, and I don't bring that, inanimate object or that type of scenario into my universe. There's less chance of being hit by a kangaroo than it is by a bus. But the concept is, put your code together so that you do have an exit strategy, so that you can hand across to a different developer. You'll still be valuable in the project, but it's worth giving yourself code that allows you to walk away from the system. I've worked on some systems for 10 to 20 years, and sometimes because it's the way they were written before I got my hands on them. So put your code together with an exit strategy. When we talk about kangaroos, this is Roger. Roger's a mammal. Roger is 6'7". He's 200 pounds, and that's him crushing a steel bucket. Sometimes I think I'd rather be hit by a bus than by Roger. Some references. This presentation is based on a blog post that we published yesterday. And you'll find some of the links that we talked to about in the blog post in this design your code. I have put a link there to the YouTube presentation I put together for Engage 2020, and a link down there to Uncle Bob as well. As a conclusion, as a takeaway, think about the developer next. Whether it's yourself, another member of your team that's just started, or even someone who's been doing this for a lot of years. Put that as the context of your code. A lot of this is also so that as a developer, you can be happy and productive. we want to have a fun experience writing code. We want to be productive in how we write the code. It's what we do for a living, so let's try and make it fun. And again, get out of your comfort zone. Rather than just putting together a function as you have for the last X number of years, go and research another way of doing things. I was building some dashboards. I went and looked at a number of blog posts at the time that were talking about using SQL to then put things into a virtual list. And I also looked at using execute data API within FileMaker itself. And then I looked at putting together a data warehouse to present the data for the actual dashboard. But go and look at multiple ways of producing the same code, and or get out of your comfort zone. Expand what you're doing as a developer. I haven't been following the chat at all. Let's have a look at the chat and see if there's anything in there, or if anyone's got any questions they want to come up with.
Thank you, Darrin. I haven't also seen any questions on the chat. However, there is now just some comment from Tony. And Tony, you can unmute yourself if you would like to chat.
Yeah, Darrin, thanks. I enjoyed both the presentation and the blog post, which I read earlier today. I like what you did with the card windows to the, to be able to toggle the document windows. We've certainly seen that is, debugging a card window is hard, but card windows are layouts and they can be viewed in different ways. So I thought that was very cool. One of the things that we discovered recently is card windows, which are awesome. Document windows, which predated them, have an advantage that you can stack them. Card windows, there's a limit to how many you can stack. I don't know if that makes sense, but we had a UI, very complicated. It was, pop a window, and card windows you can't do it. But document windows you can spawn as many as you want. Anyway, I like that feature that you came up with.
I combine a card window with a slide control for context as well. A user can really only be looking at one screen at a time, and have one context focusing at the time. So if you've got them in the main view, and I'm not talking about like a detail or master detail list, but more just say a list of records, and we want to click on one to see a card pop up, you can move in and out of different contexts across the slide controls based on wanting to present different data. And like the slide control presentation I put together, you can move a user through a wizard with the slide control and keeping them in the one window. One of the complexities of having multiple windows open at one time is obviously record locking. And we would have seen a blog post just recently from our friend Weet-Bix in New Zealand, from Daniel, putting together a way of using, I think he's used a web viewer to be able to lock the records in different contexts. I try to stay away from having multiple contexts open at any one time.
Yeah, using the features in combination seems to be where the magic starts to occur. So I'm on the same page with you on that. One other thing that you said, which is near and dear to my heart, is the idea of logging errors. We do that. We kind of centralize a lot of things in a help ticket system, because an error is something that we have to deal with, and we put it in the same table as user requests, feature requests, bug reports if those happen. I think that's one of the most important modules to add to any system. Give people the ability to ask for more.
Yeah. We had from an error capturing perspective, we did have a solution that spoke directly to Jira. And so we were creating tickets directly from FileMaker on errors within Jira, and then we're using Jira to publish that out to the IT support team.
Yeah, and in your blog post, Darrin, you mentioned Slack, which to me is great. I tell customers that if we're building a system, and it's brand new, there's a pretty good chance there's going to be an error or two. It's going to happen. And the best that we can do if there is an error is provide kind of a rapid response. So we're integrated with Slack, and I think it's a customer please when you say, okay, you requested a feature or you hit an issue, and we got a Slack notification and we're calling you a minute or two later.
Yeah.
All is forgiven if you're quick.
Mm-hmm. Look, I'm not going to say that you can actually fix the error without them knowing, but you can have a very quick response and make it a very good user experience from the developers. So, anyone look at the 17 bullet points and any sort of numbers people want to share as to what they're currently using, what they would like to use, and even more what they disagree with? No.
Darrin, maybe you can bring up that slide that has those bullet points as a reference.
All 17, yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I would say one thing that I find interesting is that even looking at a script or a perfect example is looking at a script, and sometimes even just spending the time to organize the script so the script is nicely balanced, so that the comments are above the section that represent what it's doing, and so it isn't just code that's thrown together without consideration. And when I mean consideration is, again, like your developer next point, which is you're thinking of the person who comes into this for the first time and you want to orient them. So spending a little bit of time to kind of tidy up the furniture, so to speak, so that when they see it, it kind of is, first off, easy to understand and maybe a pleasant experience.
Yeah. As the process of writing code is like, step one, does it work? Okay, I got it to work. Step two, am I covering off the full CRUD? So I understand that the user is going to be creating records with these scripts. They're going to be reading them, updating them, and possibly hard or soft deleting them. And then, is it easy to troubleshoot once I've finished the script? And okay, is it economical? Is it easy to read? Could I spend 5-10 minutes adjusting this script so that if I do open it up in 6 months' time, I understand what it's supposed to do? And yeah, when we talk about putting something in advertising, we talk about the squint test and the color of text to see how something's on the screen and to what stands out. Same with the script. Look at the script and say, well, this is very comment heavy at the top, or this function's very heavy. And could I abstract this without complicating it to make it simpler to troubleshoot or just to read, just to look at it? So yeah, absolutely.
It's funny when you say you got code that you get it to work. And there's a funny reference in Uncle Bob's videos where he actually plays on that theme where, like when a programmer gets it to work, it's like, okay, stop, don't touch it.
That's it.
Don't mess with it. It's working,
Yeah. It does what it's supposed to. Don't mess with it.
Yeah, exactly.
One of the things that sorry, mine was muted there. Sorry. One of the things that I've found that's super useful, especially when working in a team, is making sure that every time a script is edited, that the developer who edited it actually puts in the date and their name or initials, preferably name, so that you can go back and actually find out, who made this change and when did it happen? And to your comment earlier about, comparing from day to day, when did this error occur? I found it ridiculously useful to be able to know that. I mean, I put a date stamp in the title of every script. I wish it was easier to do just automatically in FileMaker, but I just put a square brackets with a standardized date format as the last edit date of the script right in the title, and then I can just easily find show me everything that was worked on yesterday, that sort of thing. Incredibly useful. And also I've worked on, in the 30 years I've been doing this, I would say 90+% of the systems I've worked on have been systems that other people built that I was brought in to fix. And I'm always amazed at how many times there's either no comments at all or no indication of who the developers were. I've even had some systems where there were developers' initials, but I have no idea who the developers are because it was 15 years ago. So that can be. I find that to be really, really useful.
Yeah, and the benefit of the DDR tools is you can do a comparison report from two different DDRs,
right?
And then start to see, where the code's, okay, this script was changed, this function doesn't work anymore, and yes, there are initials against that script to say that, in this case, Jerry changed it 3 weeks ago.
Right.
And you can actually go back to the DDR and see how the code was previously to how it is now. Because yes, you see the script in the current context. How was it 3 weeks ago?
Yeah.
What's changed? It's also what's going on around the script as well. Have you an error because the layout was deleted, or has it failed because you're going to layout by abstraction using get layout name, and unfortunately someone's changed the name with the timestamp, or whatever functions.
Yeah.
Because you'll see how that element's being referenced in the DDR to then give you a hint of what may have changed in that system. So there's little nuggets you can pick up over the years to help developer next. Anything else here that we have yay, nays, or nevers on the list?
David had a question in the chat. So what sort of errors are you logging and which are you not logging?
Yeah, it's one of those things, more data is better. And you've got to define what an error is. I've seen some systems have gone as far as to have a lookup table as to what FileMaker's native errors are, and coming back. One interesting one on the pushing the script off to perform on server, and I'm really going to rack my brain here, is it error 827 that says that there were too many scripts running on the server? To then come, and that's what's returned. To say, no, hang on, it's almost like a collection of what you think's going to happen, but you can't grab all of them. I did have a UAT system that only, 6 people out of the 300 that use the system were allowed in UAT, but there were times that they would share computers, and then someone would come in and launch the shortcut on their desktop to UAT, get a dialogue to the screen that they were in UAT, please be sure that that's what you want to do. And UAT had orange instead of grey as the background, and they'd still think they were editing live data. And so we would send out an SMS to the support team, or a Jira ticket, more an SMS because the Jira tickets weren't looked at straight away. And they could then contact that user and say, hey, you're in the UAT, are you really sure you should be in there? So it's what happening most at your location that's going to see what sort of errors you need to capture, and that will grow. I do see systems that log every script that's ever executed. I don't know how often developers go back and go through those. That one's debatable.
Part of that question is around errors and error capture. One of my bugbears is people who start every script with set error capture on and allow user abort off. But that's a whole other blog article on that.
Yep.
And there are certain errors that happen in scripts, such as the error 100 when record not found, or 100 or 101, whatever it is, at the end of a loop when you've got to go to the next record. And the only thing that stops that loop is the error. And so the error has to be there to stop the loop. And of course, there are techniques to stop that error ever being generated. But those are the sort of errors that you obviously don't care about because they're supposed to happen.
Mm-hmm.
It's more of a question of is there a list of what errors you should be capturing, and if the error is happening, does the error happen occasionally, like a exceeded host capacity, or is it something that's just your bad programming that means that error will happen, but it'll never happen again when you fix the script?
Yeah, and understanding how error capture on and allow user abort off, because I'm putting those together, how they really work, you'll then get a better understanding of when to use them, as you say, David, because there is a practice of just putting them in the start of the script and off you go without understanding the context. As an example, leaving or allowing a user to do an unstored search on records where you've got allow a user abort switched off, they can just be sitting there without being able to cancel the search. So yeah, there are times you want to put the control back in the hands of the user, and there are times that if there's an error message, you want to handle it as a developer. And that's also how you structure your if statements for your errors as well. You can have a custom function that says if an error occurred, or you target the errors. But then, as you say, what if there's an error that you haven't thought about and it comes through your code and the script just keeps running?
Mm-hmm.
So yes, good understanding of how those two functions work and how you structure them in your scripts. Not just doing it because that's how you've always done it.
Yeah, I mean the upshot would be it would be interesting to know what kind of errors you would suggest that you should capture.
The key one is permissions.
Hmm.
You run a script that the user doesn't have permissions to edit those records. There is a method of setting up certain layouts purely for scripts to edit records, and therefore you can have a different set of permissions on those records for those layouts. But yeah, the idea that you can run a script as the developer with full access and it writes the records, and then you'll have one of your users in your admin group run that same script and it can only set half the fields. And it's no good saying that the light globe in your office works when it's a permission issue hitting some of those fields in that table.
Mm.
Experience shows that these sort of things will come up that you need to grab or to capture as you're going.
One would suggest that sort of thing should come up in UAT.
Yeah.
It's not something that's going to suddenly turn up one day.
No, unless you're making changes to the live server, and we don't do that, do we? So
I'm looking for it right now, but I can't find it. But one request I had put in a long time ago was that we have the event log on the server, but the event log will only log errors to scripts that run on PSOS or scheduled scripts. And if a user has a bunch of scripts that they run and they're running those scripts, they're running locally. If they encounter any errors in those scripts, those errors don't get logged anywhere. And I remember speaking to John Thatcher about, logging all errors for all possible places where scripts can be run, like in the data API, in FileMaker Go, in FileMaker Client, in the XML API, and I don't know where else. Maybe the OData API as well now that we have it, and having one place where all errors are logged. And I think it was a question of like, oh well, that will slow things down. And I said, would love to have something where when in UAT testing, we can turn it on and there will be some visual indicator to all users that yes, things are going to be a little bit slower, but we are actually logging any errors that happen anywhere in one central place so that we can track them down and get rid of them. Unfortunately, it was never implemented. And the short version of that was the set logging option, which you can script and you can run the ability to log errors into a local file, write them to a local file, but that's just one user and it's not multi-user. And that's, I don't remember now if it was compatible with FileMaker Go as well, but anyway, that was the idea. I'll try and find the suggestion. But
yeah, I think there was a technique of putting the error message into a dialog when you're running a script on server to get to
what you do is
appear in the log.
Re-log in as forget the technique, but it basically piggybacks on the fact that you're forcibly making an error happen and you're writing something into the re-login script step and it gets written out in the event log.
If I may, Vince.
Yep.
So yes, when using the relogin script step, what is entered as the account name, if the relogin fails, the account name information gets written to the server log. So you can enter whatever account name you want as a message, and that gets into the server log.
Into the access log. Because there's an error logging into access, and the error gets written in as the username of this person who tried to log into the system. So you're trolling through the access log to try and find the error that someone's created because you've filtered it through to that particular log.
Yeah, I think I credit Hansa for the technique, and I think the interest here is that it's server side. Understanding that there are different logs on the server, and yes, I would assume that this gets into the access log. But all in all, that was the suggested hack to get something listed at all on the server side.
Yeah, it's kind of like the hidden portal feature of hiding buttons back in the FileMaker 6 days before we had the hide condition. That if you had an element that was sitting on a portal and you switched a field in that record to say that relationship was no longer valid, it would hide the item. It's that sort of hack. But then you question when they invented the web viewer. at Claris? Did they imagine that we'd be using it the way we do today?
So speaking of hacks, if you are writing error log local, it would seem to me that if you really wanted to, you could, at the end of each script, you could use the FileMaker 18, I think it is, data writing scripts. What are they called? You know, read, write, those things, FileMaker 18, and read the file, read the contents, and set it to a help ticket system.
Native file scripts.
Yeah, those guys.
Yeah,
Those.
the problem, Tony, is that people are connected as a client using FileMaker Pro on their laptop a lot, and they'll just close the lid, and you can't capture that event. And now you've got all this log data written there you don't get, and so it's unreliable, really.
That's totally true. And at the same time, you also have these disconnected systems. You know, the service systems where somebody's out in the field and they don't have their connectivity, and then you know, maybe it gets picked up next time. So then you can't use the relogin trick. So I guess it's different tools in the toolbox depending. And the other one is don't make any errors.
Yep.
I don't think that Apple or Microsoft gives us enough time to actually allow you to run any sort of script.
Apple or Microsoft gives you enough time to run any sort of script. What do you mean?
No, on a power down event or a shutdown event.
Oh, I see. Yeah. I mean, I thought of it as more of as a debug on feature that could be turned on the server per solution or per file, and then that file would tell all of its clients, hey, anytime you get a script error, you got to send it to me. And, you know, so that way, yeah, it's going to be slower because it's going to be sending that traffic, but that way you collect all the errors in one place. But
I know, like the top call on the server where you set the flag and you can then start capturing the, you know, you switch it on and off, you know, it's going to degrade performance when you're getting all the top call reports.
No, that's quite a bit different.
Is it? Okay.
Yeah, top call is a local feature. It runs at C++ speeds without anything blocking it. And it doesn't take a major amount of performance from the server, especially with today's servers. Today's machines are like when top call stats was created on those machines, you know, like what, a decade ago or so?
Yeah.
That may have mattered, right? But now you're bringing in network performance. You're getting whatever lag from every client logging off messages to. So Vince is no longer in Germany, but I'm going to make fun of his Germany. He's got his how many milliseconds from here to there?
well, 200 plus milliseconds.
Yeah. So yeah. So every single message that you send to the server, 1/4 second, eaten up.
Yep. Well, that's
I feel that. Yeah, I feel that pain down under too. It's not compete for latency when we're around the world.
Well, I don't know about different countries, but I heard something recently, like, I don't know, 2 or 3 months ago. People in Australia all have symmetric gigabit to the house. Like 98% of the houses in New Zealand have symmetric gigabit, and then a lot of businesses just have 10 gigabit to their business.
Sorry, that was Australia?
New Zealand, I believe.
New Zealand,
Yeah, but there are only 10 people in New Zealand.
Kent, do you want to answer that one?
I don't think it's quite 10 gig. Most the city areas of New Zealand have fibre to the business or home, and there are plans which offer gigabit fibre, but definitely not 10 gigabit. That would be nice.
And what about 10 people there? Do you want to clarify that as well?
I've got a few staff sick today, so we are down to 10 in the office, but not normally we have a little bit more than that.
Yeah. Like I mentioned in the introduction, I have fiber to the bedroom, and the lowest plan gives me 100 meg down and about 20 meg up. I can burst that out to 700 meg down for double the cost I have here now. So I can get to 700 meg, but that gigabit is probably a little bit further. I am in a 30-story apartment building with, I think, 60 apartments sharing all that pipe.
Hey, Kent, how much does that cost? Like your 1 gigabit symmetric to the house?
That's a question to ask me. I don't know that one.
Well,
I think
I know.
100 meg plan on unlimited data would be about 99 New Zealand a month. Current exchange rates, that's about probably 60 US a month. I believe the 1 gig plans could be double that, but they're all shared across 50 connections. So while you may have 1 gig, you're sharing it with 50 other households.
So we've got a little pocket in the U.S. On the south side of Utah. There's a company. Sorry, there's a government who's putting in symmetric gigabit to every house, and all the vendors can get in on this and charge the customer for their access, even though they didn't do it. It's actually the government doing it. And a lot of these people are paying, like $20 a month for symmetric gigabit to their house. Now, I hardly get squat where I live, and I think it's like $100 or $80, I forget what, but it's like 4 times more for like quarter the speed.
It would be $100 a month US to get the 700 meg down here on my plan.
Yeah, we can't even get that here, I don't think, at least in the Bay Area.
Yeah, I'm in a precinct that's about 8 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a rare precinct as well. They were talking about rolling out fiber to the curb and with our NBN, and it never happened. And they ended up putting fiber back to the node at the telco. Crazy.
I'd like to see people do it. I mean, or companies do it. I'd also like to get rid of the monopolies, that's the reason why our costs are so high. So there's.
Sorry, in New Zealand, the government basically, we used to have Telecom, which was the only provider. A few years ago, the government basically forced a separation of the lines and the provider into two. And then they basically started out a plan to roll fibre out across the country, including setting a cap on how much the ISPs could charge. So I just looked it up. It's $105 a month for a 1 gig fibre plan, and that's fibre to the house. New Zealand, so about, like I said, about 60 to 65 US a month. Our problem is that we're at the bottom and everything has to go via Hawaii, US. So we blame the US for our slow performance.
It's probably correct. At least inside the country, I bet it's fine.
Oh yeah, it's no problems. I've got like 3 milliseconds between where we are and the top of the country, so no problems within the country.
And what's the time to some place in the U.S.? What's the, do you have any measurements on that?
I just measured New York. I'm kind of embarrassed for the city. We're a bit of a backwater here. 55 MB, I guess megabits, I guess, up and 61 down. Actually, it's 55 down and 61 up. But that all said, it seems quite sufficient for normal day-to-day use. I can connect to the internet and watch a Netflix movie at the same time.
The only problem is when you have a family of 4 and everyone wants to watch their own thing on TV and connect to the internet and do whatever else while they're watching the TV.
Keith, have you thought about buying a bunch of DVDs and getting each member of the family a DVD player?
I have I still have a DVD player, but I never use it anymore.
Yeah. I don't know if Netflix still does the thing where you can get a DVD and then mail it back at the end of the month and get another one. That might solve your bandwidth problem.
Oh no, it's sufficient what I have. It's just every once in a while it's like, oh, everyone's doing something.
Actually, I read that the guys who were coming up with the idea for Netflix met with Blockbuster with their idea, and they were just laughed out of the office. and within 12 months, I think there was one Blockbuster store left. So
Yeah, their model wasn't going to last if the internet came into existence.
Yeah.
And I mean, my Blockbuster would actually charge for not, if I didn't rewind. So back when they were doing tapes and not DVDs, it's like, yeah, we're going to charge you for not that. And then they would turn around and 20 seconds later, it would be in a machine and have already been rewound.
Mm-hmm.
I got charged for not rewinding my DVDs, and I thought they were scamming me.
What I've heard about Blockbuster was that the CEO wanted to go that way, but the board did not want to. And my understanding was that the overwhelming argument was that Blockbuster's revenue stream was strongly dependent on late fees, and Netflix's revenue model was doing away with Netflix with late fees altogether. So they were like, well, we're implanted and we're running the show and we don't feel like changing how we do things. And then yes, they ended up being caught by their own trap, so to speak.
I mean, the world is changing, like you go to a hotel these days, there's no one at the reception. There's just a sign, there's a barcode, QR code, help, this is where you go. This is like, the world is a different place in a lot of ways. Like, I mean, like, when was it? About a few months ago, I used the service Turo to rent a car. And, like you go to rent a car, like Hertz or Budget or all these big players. You stand in line for half an hour and then you get lectured about all the insurance and all the things. And it takes like 15, 20 minutes to sign a stupid contract. And then you finally go look for your car. Turo, you go there, you walk in the parking lot, you get in, turn on the car, you go. Like, you've already signed all that paperwork on your phone. So like, in terms of the digital transformation world and what, us as software developers do and improve efficiencies in different areas, etc. The world it's continually transforming. And like these blockbuster companies, if you get stuck in that mindset, a little bit like what Darrin was saying, try something new. Try to look at a function and learn a new way to use it, or something, challenge yourself and you'll be amazed.
Every time I'm at a restaurant or something,
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
I'll say something, hey, can I Apple Pay this? And it's like, hey, do you know you can use an iPhone for that now? And it's like you can come right to the table and just iPhone it. And they all have these little kiosks at the table. And you know that like they have like 50 or 60 of those kiosks. And that's a bloody fortune to have. They could have like 3 or 4 iPhones,
Mm-hmm.
running that new stuff that Apple did. And they could come up to your thing and have a, what do you call a square D slider?
Mm-hmm.
And just scan it. So one or the other, and you could be in and out in a second.
Yeah, I mean, take it a step further, Keith. I was at Saul's a breakfast place in Berkeley, and that's actually where I first landed. And when I landed in the Bay Area, I met some people on a weekly basis at Saul's diner. And now, ever since COVID, now they have a whole different process. You sit down, there's a little QR code on a little thing on the table. It's your table 22, whatever. And you order from your phone. And as soon as you order, you've actually opened up a tab with your credit card. So like if you walk up the restaurant, you've already paid for it. Like they're not going to go chase you down to pay for it, whatever. But you order it on, and then you can have an open tab, and then whenever you want to add something, you add it. And then you close it and you can add a tip or whatever and you're done. So like,
is there an extra payment
servers that are there
for using that service?
I did not see one. And from you think of it, it's like all of a sudden, like there's still a little bit of confusion if someone wants something or something particular, but basically there's fewer people running around. It's just people delivering food. The orders are going in. You're actually interacting directly with the kitchen. You're interacting directly with the kitchen staff. You're putting in the orders. They're going directly to the kitchen. And so
I go to the Cheesecake Factory every so often, right? Well, they offer that, you can pay your bill with this service, right? So at the bottom of your bill, there's a barcode or QR code, and you scan it, and they charge you $5 extra for the opportunity of using another service to pay the Cheesecake Factory bill.
To me, that's like the board of Blockbuster saying, "Oh, we're gonna lose our business, whatever." I mean, it's short-sighted because the world, like they got to figure out a way where they can have that service. And it's part of their, their infrastructure.
I like the idea of Saul's as long as there's not an extra charge. If you're going right against their system and you're putting the order right into their system and you're paying it right against their system and there's no extra charge for it, then that's perfect. Now there are people that don't like being like my brother's technical, but he doesn't like learning new technical stuff. Like he's just getting to be an old fuddy duddy, like not wanting to learn more technical. He's a parts manager at a BMW, and he's just had it with technology. Doesn't want to learn anything more.
Keith, I was at PF Chang's the other day, and it was all pretty traditional. I ordered with a server, not a computer server, a human server, and she brought the bill when we were done. And there was a QR code on the bottom, which I could scan with my phone. Only when I scanned it, it came up, it took me to a website and brought up a page, and it said something like there was a system error, try again. and this is a user experience thing you guys will all appreciate. The only button on the screen was try again. That was all you could do. And when you click try again, nothing happened, and there was no cancel. There was nothing you could do. So I ended up just handing her my credit card and doing it the old-fashioned way. But so that's an example that it seemed like a great idea, except it failed miserably and accomplished nothing and just wasted everybody's time.
See, when it's
Yeah.
when it
Did you
belongs
try
to
turning on, set error capture?
Yeah, I didn't have that option.
when the pay system and everything belongs to the company who is serving you, then the system will work. But these third-party attachments, it's like, oh, let's have XYZ company do our payments.
Yeah, exactly.
They have
Wait,
no
yeah.
like, they have no reasoning to like go off and be sure it works.
Mm-hmm.
We were in Barcelona traveling, and a little bit of a language problem, and walked into Honest Greens. They had an app, or you could queue up, and there was 20, 30 people in the queue. So I downloaded the app, set up the payment card details in the app, ordered what we wanted to, hit the button, said thank you for your order. Now please queue up for your knives and forks and buzzer to tell you when your meal's ready. Same queue that everyone else was ordering. Same queue that people were looking at the menu trying to get what they wanted, and some things weren't available. So they were this close to getting
Yeah.
it.
Yep.
But we went back because the food was good.
Has anyone tried a new place called Italy?
Italy, yeah.
Yeah, EATALY.
Yeah.
The food's pretty good. Their desserts are, oh my God, really sweet.
Why do you mention it?
Oh, it was the first time.
Oh, I said.
So they're, Vince, you've been at the mall on Stevens Creek, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so they're in there now,
Mhm.
and they take up like 10 stores worth on the third story of a 2-story building. This new section was built,
Wow.
and they took the first story of one shop, the second story of one shop, and the third story above 10 shops. And in that first and second stories, they have escalators, and you can go in and just get to-go items. They have a big, huge market on the top story, and it's a nice market to have in a mall because it doesn't like stink up the whole mall. Like you go to some malls and they have like a market that has fish and other like poultry items, and it really kind of messes up the whole mall as far as the smell goes. But they had, breads, wines, fresh vegetables, meats. They were making cheese right on the floor.
On the floor? That sounds disgusting.
Well, they were behind a window.
Oh, so you couldn't see if the floor was clean. Okay, I get it.
Yeah, that's better. At least you don't see it.
But they had a
Make your
vat.
own pie.
I take things kind of literally sometimes.
Yeah, they had a
Make your
vat
own
with
pie. Yeah.
curds and whey, so
Yeah.
you could see them like working the curds and making
Hey,
the
speaking
cheese.
of food, I've got dinner waiting in the other room, so I'm going to take off. Pleasure
Bye,
seeing all you
Jerry.
guys. Darrin, thanks for a great
Thanks for
presentation.
All right.
Yeah.
Thanks, Jerry.
You guys all-
Getting
Thanks,
late.
Jerry.
I need to drive
Jerry.
40 miles home.
Yeah. I will kind of tie it back together with what Keith was saying and what we just been talking about to what Darrin was saying. And I think sometimes really when it comes down to it, it's all about the little details. All the little tiny details and getting it right and paying attention and being a little bit what Jerry was saying, being very literal about things and seeing where the little things catch you. Because I notice also sometimes when people transform real world into digital world, all the little things that can get you snagged up, and the little, like a perfect example, you fill out a form and you're applying for something and you're doing it for yourself and your family or some other family members. And it asks you, it basically assumes that it will be like one or more people, right? And there's no option to say, no, I don't have another person. So just the little details of being able to catch that is all about the usability, using the system, exercising it, and running it through its paces in many scenarios to catch those places that that get messed up. And, and that makes for a great user experience when the people really take the time to go through systems.
What's amazing to me is like they want to take a old process that has been, they've been doing it for decades and they're so comfortable with it, and they want to make that process exactly digital. They don't want any changes in it. They don't want to rethink it.
Yeah.
And it's like, and they want the exact same paper printing out and the exact same everything.
Yeah.
It's like, you know, I could cut out 12 steps out of your process. You know, you don't really need to do these things.
No.
And how about these other things over here? You don't really need to do that. I want to hear the explanation of like how their business works and whatever, but I also want to be given a chance to like, hey, can I make your business better? You know, can I actually get rid of like 30 years of heavy duty weight that you've been carrying around for decades?
I'll hear you once, but let me give you utopia, and that's probably what you need.
Yeah.
No, let me see. When we talk about this experience, my backdrop there is we live in a marina and we've got 2 main restaurants that we can go to out of the 10 that we love. 2 very different experiences. One is you can't book, you're shown to the table, you use your phone with the QR code. That phone needs to be handed around to everyone, or you need to set up a tab so that you can order the food for the rest of the family, and it's brought to your table. You go and get your own water, and that's one experience. The other experience is an Italian restaurant that's been there for 30 years. You book, it's very exclusive. You get in there, they bring the water to the table, they tell you the specials, they get to know who you are, and you're given the little, if you spend enough, you get the little complimentary drink at the end as part of that they actually make at home. And you still pay by your credit card. You can still cover the bill. Very different experiences between the 2. We end up at the Italian 9 times out of 10, just because that's the experience we want. That's us.
The second one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, we want someone to refill our glass. You know, we're not cooking at home. We want to know what the specials are. We want to be able to pay the bill separately than the phone being handed around. You know, we want, although I've got to bring these, I want a paper menu to look at what's going on. It's a dining experience.
I'll say that I think there's it's important to have businesses where there's a human touch. You know, I obviously work with technology, so I'm not a Luddite. That said, you know, I don't think all transactions should be cash. You know, I don't think every transaction should be tracked and traced. I don't think everything that anyone does, you know, people should have a little privacy. Yeah, human touch. And also one other thing, I read something recently about barcodes being potential attack vectors. In other words, if you look at a barcode and if you see a barcode in a window and it says scan this barcode, there's really not there's not a lot of protection against someone replacing the barcode that's in the window with their own barcode that takes you to a nefarious website. So whereas I would use barcodes for a customer project, I wouldn't necessarily scan a barcode. If I see a barcode on a subway sign, I'm not going to scan it.
Yeah, someone can put their own sticker on the table for the menu. And send you off to their own.
And someone's yelling at you as you leave going, hey, you didn't pay.
Yeah.
Oh, well, I mean, I'm sure there's businesses, I've seen the businesses where, the robot brings you your food, and, call me old school, but I don't mind having the food brought by a seasoned waiter with a polish and a conversational flair, or a young person, with their first job out in the world interacting with other people. There's nothing wrong with that. There's plenty of room for technology. It just doesn't have to take over everything.
I've been at restaurants with robots, but there's a person that follows that robot. Sometimes they're like 3-5 seconds behind, but the robot will get there, and then the person will come and divvy everything out and get it going and press a button on the robot, and the robot goes back.
Yeah, I mean, that sounds better. I mean, a balance. I mean, I guess that's bad news for the bus people. You're kind of knocking out some entry-level jobs.
Oh, that's only for delivery. The bus people still have to come by and clean up.
Yeah, I mean, one of the, New York FileMaker Pro user group, and, there'll be a day when where everybody's comfortable meeting in person. And you get the whole numbers for a user group meeting. Well, one of the most fun things in New York City is after the meeting to go to a New York City restaurant and just catch the whole scene, human beings swirling around through time and space. Nothing like it.
Yeah, bring on in-person Claris Engage 2023.
Yep.
Have we scheduled out a date, time, location?
For what? For 23? Claris Engage 23?
Yeah.
I haven't heard anything. Steve might know, but I haven't heard any mention of that.
We have not.
Normally Brad's last slide on the presentation, isn't it? You go to the keynote to find out where next year is. That's the last one more thing.
Yeah, I know Brad couldn't go to either Japan or China this year. It was too hard to get in and out of the country. It was like, oh, you're going to have to be there for 3 weeks or something for a day or two, because they're still under tight restrictions. So you have to like be in the country for a week, stay at a hotel, and not get sick.
No guarantees they're not going to change the rules after you book your ticket.
Yeah, I've had that happen. Last year I went to Thailand, and I literally got my expensive test the 24 hours before, and the US was not accepting those results. They said you must be tested within 24 hours. And I'm like, even if I get tested right now, I'm not going to, because flying from Thailand to US is like a 30-hour thing, maybe 36, depending on, because you're going to have like, let's see, it was a 2-leg flight, and the first layover was 3 hours, and the next layover was 9 or 10 hours, and the flight itself is like 15 plus 5 plus. Well, we came through Chiang Mai, so that was like an hour flight. So I mean,
That's it. Yeah, it's hard to win.
Yeah, it's like. But
could have taken a private jet.
All they did was ask me to go up front and take the 15-minute test. And I'm like, well, those aren't reliable. So what? Wait, why are we taking a 15-minute test when literally like 8 or 12 hours ago I took?
Science.
Yeah, it's wacky.
Science.
More government than science.
I was being sarcastic.
Yes. We had this situation in Australia where people were flying from Europe via Japan to here, and the plane broke down, and they were talking about getting 4 to 6 days before they could get the next plane to them, and they weren't allowed to leave the airport because of the COVID rules. So they didn't move them to a hotel or any of those sorts of things. They were bit of Tom Hanks just
Yeah.
wandering
Tom Hanks
around
was
the
there.
airport.
Was he there?
You saw that movie about a real life guy who stayed in a
That was I think that's the Tom Hanks
Tom.
movie. I'm looking it up right now.
yeah, the
Yeah.
he was stuck in the hotel and couldn't, or in the
Airport,
airport for a full year and couldn't leave because he was like a man without a country.
Wow.
And that was a true story. I forget exactly why, like he lost his citizenship or something.
I'm going to provide the Wikipedia link for this.
yeah.
Just show
Certainly, yeah, that's the one.
your screen.
Oh, actually, the film is partially inspired by the. Did you say share my screen? Let's see, I could do that. I have to kind of make sure I don't have any.
Just make that window as large as it can be.
Okay, I will do that. Hold on. Can I
just share that
do I
window.
have the power to share my screen?
I
will do it. Let me see if I have that power.
I seem to be
Just start playing the movie and share your screen. And
Oh,
Okay.
wait, now we're all in trouble.
Let's see. Hold on. It's an 18. I can't believe this is true. The 18-year stay of Meher Karimi Nassari in Terminal 1 of Paris Charles de Gaulle Airport.
Oh,
18 years?
I didn't think it was 18. I thought it was just a year.
You could be a grandpa by 18 years.
Wow.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the name of the movie.
Well, at least they probably have good food, you know. That's insane.
Yeah, 18 years. What was
18 years.
What was the reason why he was stuck?
Well, he flew from Brussels to London via Paris, and he was sent back to Paris because he lost his refugee passport. France denied him entry.
Oh, so he was not careful with his passport, and he was already a refugee.
Yeah, this is okay.
Yeah, I would imagine they would have good food in Charles de Gaulle.
Here he lived on croissants and snails.
I forget which French airport, but there's two of them, right? There's Charles de Gaulle and there's the other one.
He was stuck in the Charles de Gaulle.
One of them is horrible.
Yeah.
So probably the Charles de Gaulle one. The layout is just, it's crazy. It's a mess.
He
And I
applied
can
for
see
a
how
visa
he get stuck there.
Yeah, he'd applied for a visa to go to the other airport.
Have you guys been in the Singapore airport?
The what?
Yeah.
Singapore? That's south of Thailand, right? Is that the one?
Yeah, down the bottom, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we went via Singapore when we went to Europe.
That's a
2 months ago,
brand new airport. It's pretty fancy.
Yeah.
You can put your baggage on a cart and literally say, "Take me to gate 4." And the device just like starts driving.
Wow.
Just make sure you don't do any littering while you're in Singapore. They run a pretty tight ship over there, from what I've heard.
It's pretty clean. I didn't
think
see.
they have like littering is like a year in jail or something. I'm exaggerating, but
Yeah.
Allowed to chew gum.
No.
They also have 2 hotels and like 20 places to eat. I was surprised at how little shops there were.
It depends where you stay, yeah. When we stayed in Singapore, I think we're in the cab for at least half an hour to an hour each time we travel to hotels.
I'm talking about inside the
Oh,
airport.
the airport itself, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's not much. We actually lost an iPhone at the Singapore airport. And we found it using Find My Phone. Although it did spend 5 weeks in the lost and found until we came back from Europe. But we were told they didn't have it, and I sent them a picture of where in the airport it was with Find My Phone. And I said, it's right here, right now. And they said, oh, that's our lost and found room. Someone must have put it in there and not told us. They went in there, they found it, and we picked it up in 5 weeks. So if you're going to travel, turn on Find My Phone.
Yeah, and shove tags in everything.
In your luggage, put your AirTags in there. Ensure that you've got a second device that does all your two-factor authentication. Because when you're trying to log into a different account from something that's no longer doing it, and your phone's sitting in the lost and found, you can't approve the two-factor authentication because it's sitting somewhere very different. So
Yeah,
just the modern world of traveling.
I had a friend who put tags and everything. He must have, his wife, his kids, like 12 suitcases or whatever the count was. And his bags went to a different country than he did. And he could literally follow all his luggage going down conveyor belts, going down whatever, it's like, oh, it's over here right now.
And I'm not over there.
Yeah.
I saw Lufthansa just banned AirTags.
No, they took it back.
Really?
Oh, they did?
Did they?
Yeah.
Nice.
Why would they ban AirTags?
I don't know.
It
Because
holds
they
them
don't
accountable.
understand technology.
Irrational.
Just holds them accountable.
Yeah.
They're jealous. I don't know.
Their excuse was that it transmits, but it's too low power to cause any actual issues.
It's like,
Mhm.
yeah, when you couldn't use your mobile phone at a gas station because they were worried about it lighting on fire, sparking, blowing up.
Mhm.
Really?
There's still signs on gas pumps here in Australia telling you not to use your mobile phone while you're doing the gas. Even though you can pay with your phone.
Something about them not using your phone on the plane.
I've been watching a streaming show called Mentor Pilot. Maybe Vince saw that with his background being a aircraft of some sort.
Yep.
But he's very clear, very concise. He seems to only report exactly what the agency reported about what happened. And there's some doozies out there about like why certain airport accidents has occurred, or certain explosions have occurred. So UPS with lithium ion batteries in section 1 when it was supposed to be in a different section. Section 1 had like all the cables for and then this is like back in the 80s, so they're the person didn't report the fact that they had lithium ion, and back then they didn't they would have put it in the back of the plane if they knew that it was in lithium ion in there. And then there wasn't any devices in the container that was holding it, so they didn't get early announcement that there was a fire. in the container. It was, like 45 minutes in or an hour in to the flight before they got any notice.
Well,
So he's been like telling you all about the like why the industry has changed and how safe it is and why it's safe because of all the changes. But there's some wacky things that happen to planes. And not that planes are way safer than like walking across the street or doing all sorts of other activities. But still,